The Long Beach State 49ers are coming off a first-round tournament loss to the Arizona Wildcats after sneaking into the tournament by winning their conference tournament. The 49ers head coach was fired after finishing the regular season 18-14, but was allowed to coach through the conference tournament, that they ended up coming out on top and into the big dance, but was still to be fired after the season ended. With that being said, today I will be rebuilding the Long Beach State 49ers with the hopes to win them a national championship in 12 seasons. Huge shout out to this guy right here for requesting this team. Year 1 was looking to be a challenge, as we definitely have a harder schedule than the one in real life. And to be honest, the roster wasn't great, but it really wasn't bad either, as we have some young pieces that we can build with. And on the bright side, we are one of the highest overall teams in the conference to open up the year. Lucky for us, our first game of the season comes against a team we lost to in real life to end our season, the Arizona Wildcats, ranked number 7. This game would open all 49ers as we jump out to a double-digit lead early. But of course, as anyone would expect, it wouldn't take long for the Wildcats to get rolling and bring this back to a game, as we head into the break only up 1 point. The second half would open up and continue to be all Wildcats, as we'd see them continue to pour it on and eventually bring their own lead to double digits. But just when you thought it was all over, the 49ers came back swinging, and with just 37 seconds remaining, we had the lead once again, which would be just enough to squeeze by the number 7 ranked Arizona Wildcats. Following this win, we would open the season 3-0 before dropping our next 2 games. We would then win our next 2 games to bring us to 5-2 before traveling for our second ranked matchup of the season, this time against 12th ranked Kansas Jayhawks. The expectation was to compete, but this game would go nothing like the Arizona game did, as the 49ers were getting blown out by 20 points at the break. And so, as expected, we would fall on this one by the blowout score of 83-64. Murray's 18-point night just wasn't even close to enough. We would once again go on a 2-game win streak before meeting the University of California in the first round of the Golden Bear Classic. The start of the second half would be no different, and with time winding down, the 49ers would hold a narrow 3-point lead. I wish I could say this would be enough for the win, but it wasn't, as we fall in the first round of the Golden Bear Classic 69-66. A blowout win in our next game against Bucknell will put us at 8-4 before the start of conference play, with only one team playing at the same level as us. Marcus, and a last name I will not try to pronounce, leads us in scoring with 11 a game, while our highest overall player, Joel Murray, is having a tough senior season. The 49ers open conference play rolling, winning their first 3 games before dropping the next 2, all before heading into their first matchup against UC Santa Barbara. And while UC Santa Barbara was keeping it close, it was never really in question for the 49ers, as we led the entire second half and took the 1-point dub. Marcus's 21 points off the bench was just enough to get us by. Following this win, the team would continue to stay hot as we cruised to a solid record of 18-6 before facing UC Santa Barbara for the second time, a game that will decide the conference champion. The 49ers were struggling, but UC Santa Barbara clearly came to play, as they led the entire game en route to a 71-64 victory. And so, after finishing the season 4-1, we would lose the conference by 2 games to UC Santa Barbara, which means the 49ers were on the outside looking in, heading into the conference tournament, as we were not projected to make the big tournament through a bid. Joel Murray's season would pick up once conference play started, but it still honestly wasn't any good. Heading into the conference tournament, the 49ers would cruise through the first round with a win against UC Riverside before taking down UC Irvine in the very next round behind a big game from Joel Murray. Which brings us to the championship round, facing off against, you guessed it, UC Santa Barbara for the 3rd and final time this season. And so, with only 2.5 minutes remaining in the championship round, we're all knotted up at 69 apiece. But it would be UC Santa Barbara who would pull away when it mattered the most, as we were going to lose 79-74, missing out on the big dance. The 49ers would be selected to the NIT and draw first blood with Sam Houston State. And once again, this game was never in any real doubt, as we cruise to a double-digit win behind a great game from all of our starters. Our second round matchup puts us up in a pretty even matchup with 85 overall, North Carolina State. And this game was looking just like that, as we opened the game with both teams trading buckets from the jump, giving neither team any separation for the entire first half, which would bring us to the break all knotted up at 28 apiece. Sophomore guard Jaden Jones was in for a career night as he had 15 points at the half. The second half would be no different than the first, with this game continuing to be a battle that neither team could pull away in. And with just seconds left on the clock, Jaden Jones would go to the line for the tie, but would miss, We're going to lose this one in a close, hard-fought battle, 61-58. Gertman wins Conference Coach of the Year in his first season with the 49ers, finishing 25-10, while our center, Chance Polynice, would make the first team, while power forward Amari Stroud makes the second team. And somehow, there was only 2 freshman players in the conference, and one of them was ours. The 49ers will be losing their top 2 scorers from this past season, but with 5 coaching points, I was able to upgrade my recruiting to help us land no one. We had 2 guys on our board, but they just decided not to commit anywhere. And since we weren't able to replace our 2 best players, the team is looking much of the same, if not worse than last year. As the 49ers open the season at 75 overall, but do have the best playmaker and defender in the conference. The Niners would open the season 1-1 with a tough loss to Charlotte before traveling to face a 6-1 Missouri Tigers team. This game will go very different than anyone could have predicted, especially the odds makers, as the 49ers go on to absolutely blow out the Tigers 76-47. Jaden Jones' huge 21-point performance was more than enough to help us get the win. Sitting at 3-2, the shorthanded 49ers were somehow scheduled for 2 games on the same day. But, fortunately for us, we were somehow able to come out on top of both, and eventually go on to win our in-season tournament. At the halfway point, the team sits at 7-2 with some pretty solid wins on the season. And 4 of our starters are all scoring double figures, with Jaden Jones leading the way. Conference play would start off exactly as we wanted, as we would win our first 4 games before facing UC Santa Barbara for the first time this season. But the boys were starting to cool off, as UC Santa Barbara would continue their dominance on us from last season and route to a blowout 60-41 victory. Thankfully, the boys would not let this loss rattle us, as we would go on to win 5 of our next 6 games before meeting UC Santa Barbara for the second time this season. But, to our surprise, they aren't really in the race for the conference, which means, come season end, we are the conference champions, with a 15-3 record, as the team averaged the most rebounds, assists, and blocks per game in the conference, with Hunter and Polynice filling up the stat sheets this year. Amari Stroud would end up being our leading scorer with 13 points per game, as Jaden Jones fell off once conference play began. Heading into the conference tournament, the 21-win 49ers are a projected 12 seed in the Big Dance. As expected, we would blow through UC Riverside in the second round of the conference tournament before facing CSU, Bakersfield in the next round. Another game that would never be in any real doubt for the 49ers as we cruise back to the championship round, this time against UC Davis. Our first 2 tournament games was a clear sign and showing of what was to come, as once again we go on to win in blowout fashion, leading us to our first conference championship and appearance in the NCAA tournament as a 12 seed to face off against 5-seeded Temple. With the number 1 ranked defense in the nation, Coach Ertman and his boys were searching for an upset against a tough 89 overall Temple team. And this game was looking just like that, as the defense was getting a ton of stops while turning into some quick, easy points. And eventually, the 49ers would jump out to a huge 24-10 lead with only 6 minutes remaining in the first half. But, of course, the 49ers would go cold from here on out and allow Temple to catch up, as we headed to the break with the lead 28-26. And I wish I could say we got things rolling again in the second half, but as you can see, we wouldn't score our first points of the half until the 6-minute mark, which would lead us to being blown out by 30 after leading by double digits at one point. An all-around tough game for the majority of our players. Nonetheless, it was a very successful season for the 49ers, as Miami wins the title, while Coach Ertman wins his second Conference Coach of the Year award. Stroud and Polynice will boast first-team honors, while Jones and Traore make the second team. Once again, the team will be losing the top 2 scorers. But with 5 upgrade points, the coach's stats are getting better, which helps us land 3 total recruits, 2 5-stars and 1 4-star. Year 3, the team has taken a major step forward, as our new additions of Dale Dunnington, Juan Wood, and Oliver Ngannou help us jump to a 79 overall. And this was looking like could be the best year for the 49ers, as we have the best shooter, playmaker, pro prospect, and overall player in the conference. The Niners would start 1-0 behind Traore's huge 29-point performance before taking on the University of Cal in hope of revenge for our last season's brutal loss. Spoiler alert, we didn't get revenge, and the final score makes it seem a lot closer than it actually was. After suffering another heartbreaking loss, this time to Pittsburgh, the team would sit at 4-4 down the line before facing off against 6-2 St. Mary's. This game would not be pretty for the 49ers, as we go on to get absolutely blown out 65-43. We would once again have another heartbreaking loss behind Jaden Jones' 0-point game before facing off against the University of Washington. And if you thought this game would be any different than how our season's been going, you'd be mistaken, as we get blown out again, this time by the score of 81-60. At the halfway point, Traore is our surprising leading scorer, while Jaden Jones has just not improved over his time here. Thankfully, we would open conference play 4-0 to bring us back above 500 and hopefully salvage the season. But after a tough loss to CSU Bakersfield, we're on a 2-game skid. Thankfully, the team will get back on track as we sit at 13-9 before facing CSU Bakersfield for the second time. But this team was already 13-0 in conference, making this a must-win game for us. While this was a pretty close game much of the way through, the 49ers found a way to make it look easy as we cruised to a 10-point win, handing CSU Bakersfield their first conference loss of the season. With only 5 games remaining in the regular season, we sit at 15-9, but have to win out to even have a chance to win the conference title. Through it all, the 49ers did it, winning out, but unfortunately, it just wasn't enough, as CSU's Bakersfield would hold the tiebreaker. The team will fill up the stat sheets once again this year, leading the conference in points per game and assists per game. Lbsu Traore was without a doubt our best player this season, as he led the conference with 18 points per game. With an easy win in the second round of the conference tournament versus UC Irvine, 49ers would advance to face UC Riverside in the next round. While this game was a lot closer than anyone on our team would have liked, it still would be enough to push us to the conference championship round for the 3rd consecutive year. This game would open up no different than the usual for us, with both teams trading baskets early until Bakersfield was able to go on a run and bring their lead to double digits with big plays on offense and defense. But the 49ers had no anticipation to let the season end here, as we would go on a run of our own to get within 5 by the time the break rolled around. The second half will continue to be a battle, as the lead begins to flip-flop back and forth. And unfortunately for us, Bakersfield will be the one to take control down the stretch and go on to win 58-51. Traore's 23-point performance wasn't enough to get us into the big dance. UConn would go on to win the title as a 2 seed, and even though CSU's Bakersfield would win the conference, Yurtman would still be named Conference Coach of the Year. Lbsu Traore is named Conference Player of the Year, as him and Tone Hunter make first team, while Jaden Jones caps off his lackluster career with the second team. 3 straight 21 seasons to open Yurtman's career lands him not only a 5-year extension, but also 5 more coaching upgrade points. Yurtman would have his hands full this offseason, as we lose 5 players, including some of our best. Year 4, the team is looking extremely different than the previous years, as we brought in a ton of new faces, headlined by freshmen Jeremy Gary and Antoine Buggs. Year 4 was proving that the young team was going to have some growing pains, as we open up the season a measly 4-3 against a pretty lackluster competition, other than Arizona State. Thankfully, look at the boys returning around once conference play began, as we would open up 3-0 before facing an 8-2 UC Santa Barbara team. I wish I could say the youngins kept it up, but this game was all Guachos from the jump, as the 49ers go on to lose 77-68. An absolutely pitiful performance from every player on our team. This loss will put us on a small slide before facing the number 1 team in the conference, CSU Bakersfield. And while the Niners did lead at halftime, this wouldn't be enough to slow down the Roadrunners, as they would cruise to a relatively easy victory over us, 63-56. This loss would cause some irreparable damage to our season, as we would once again slide, and with only 5 games left, we sit at 6th in the conference, with no chance of winning it. A 13-12 regular season finish to go along with 5th in the conference is very disappointing for Yurtman standards. The 49ers' leading scorer would be freshman Jeremy Gary, while one of our few experienced players in Dale Dunnington didn't really step up to the plate this year. The first round of the conference tournament would put us up against Cal Poly, where we would have the lead up until late in the game before Cal Poly would sneak in and grab the win, and in our season at 13-13. Michigan State is crowned this year's champion, and we might have gotten snubbed for National Freshman of the Year, and not only that, we didn't even make the All-American team. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Nonetheless, Jeremy Gary would take home Conference Freshman of the Year honors and also get first team, while Antoine Buggs and Lloyd Summers make the freshman team. With only 2 not very important players to replace, Coach Yurtman would have 3 solid high school recruits, including 1 top 100 player. Year 5, the team was looking to make a huge jump from last season's abysmal finish, as we come into the season as an 83 overall with the best shooter, playmaker, and freshman in the conference. The 49ers will open the season traveling to face 92 overall Washington Husky. This game will go just as anyone would have expected, as the Huskies would absolutely steamroll the 49ers en route to a 72-57 victory. This would spell a rocky start for us as we sit at 3-4 before traveling to Norman to face the 11th ranked Sooners. This game would start just as Coach Yurtman and the 49ers would hope, with the offense rolling and bringing us to a 5-point lead early. The Sooners, however, had no intention of letting us run away with this one, especially on their home court, as come halftime, the Sooners now hold a narrow 1-point lead. Coming out of the break, both teams would be hot and the lead would begin to flip-flop for some time, with no team being able to establish a lead. With the clock starting to wind down, the Sooners were beginning to show why they were the number 11 team in the nation. But the 49ers were shooting lights out, and they would eventually bring this game back to 1 point. The 49ers would be battling all the way up until the final 30 seconds, where Oklahoma would get a bucket. But with plenty of time for us, and we would eventually get blocked as we lose 59-57. Antoine Buggs' double-double wasn't enough for the upset bid. Sitting at 5-5, our next test is in the Golden Bear Classic against the 23rd ranked UCLA Bruins. This game will be nothing like the Oklahoma game, as it would start to get ugly quick for the 49ers, with us never recovering, and we would eventually head into the half, losing by nearly 20 points. By the end of it, Oliver Ngannou would go down for the season with a torn ACL, and this would be more than enough for the Bruins to blow us out by the score of 50-33. Out-of-conference play would not treat us well, as we sit at 6-6, and our leading scorer, Ngannou, is already out for the season. After dropping our first conference game to a terrible Hawaii team, the season wasn't looking great. But just when you thought it was all over, the 49ers would rattle off 16 straight wins en route to an in-season conference championship. This team was truly in good hands, as we had the best freshman, shooter, and playmaker in the conference. Jeremy Gary would lead the way for us in his breakout year with 12 points per game and 6 assists, while 3 other starters would score double figures. Heading into the Big West Conference Tournament, the 49ers are a projected 13 seed in the Big Dance. And so, after 2 quick and easy dubs, the 49ers are headed back to the championship game against the University of Hawaii. And once again, this game will go just as expected, as with a halftime score of 30-21, the 49ers were going to cruise by the Rainbow Warriors 80-46 by an Antoine Buggs career night. The 49ers' terrific season would bring us into the Big Dance as a 12 seed to face off against 5-seeded Dayton Flyers, a 93 overall team the boys had no intention of backing down from, in which we wouldn't, as the 49ers come out hot and we jump out to a 10-3 lead early in this one. And it wouldn't take long before we would push the lead to nearly double digits. But, of course, eventually the boys would start to cool off, and the Flyers would fight right back into this one. Thankfully, the boys were able to keep control much of the game down the stretch as we head into the break up 34-26. The second half will be all 49ers, as with some big plays, we finally extend our lead to the double digits. With that being said, the Flyers were never able to recover, as the 49ers go on to win 65-55. And they would advance to the second round to face off against 4-seeded Minnesota. Regardless of the outcome of this game, the team is still extremely young, so I'm excited for what's to come. This game would open up extremely competitive, as both teams were trading baskets early, not allowing either side to gain any distance from each other. But shortly after that, Minnesota would start to prove why they're a top 4 seed in this tournament, as they would go on a run and bring their lead to double digits, and eventually ride into the break up 37-16. An ugly first half for the 49ers would lead to an even uglier second half, as we would get our backs absolutely blown out by the Gophers 71-43. The 49ers were truly in great hands, as every double-digit score from last season will be returning for next season. The Michigan State Spartans would go on to win and become back-to-back national champions. Another conference title and Conference Coach of the Year to add to Yurtman's resume, while Jeremy Gary will make an appearance on the first team and Antoine Buggs makes the second team. The 49ers will also have 2 players selected to the freshman all-conference team. Finishing the season 26-9 is a huge jump from the 13 wins we had last season, and we'll only be losing 1 player who wasn't even a starter this year. Yurtman will close out the season by adding 2 more big men to his roster, 3-star Martell Good and 4-star Thomas Engel. Year 6, the team was looking better than ever, coming in as an 86 overall, with freshman Martell Good being a 75 overall, while Thomas Engel didn't quite make the cut. And once again, it's looking like this team is built for the future, as we only have 2 seniors on the roster, while also having some of the best players in the conference. A quick 2-0 to open the season for the 49ers before traveling to face the number 10 ranked Arizona Wildcats in the Polar Bear Tip-Off Classic. This game would start off no different than any other for the 49ers, as both teams would trade baskets early for much of the first half, with no team creating any separation, as we would eventually head into the break with a narrow 1-point lead. The second half would be no different than the first, per usual, with both teams trading baskets, but it would be the 49ers to put together a run first and climb out to an 8-point lead, which would be enough to help us scrape by, beating the number 10 ranked Arizona Wildcats, 57-51. A solid outing from our 1, 2, and 3 helps us beat a ranked Arizona team for the second time in this rebuild. The 49ers would finish off the in-season tournament with 2 easy wins, bringing us to 5-0 to open the season. Unfortunately, we would suffer our first loss of the season shortly after to Monmouth, but we're sitting pretty at 8-1 before traveling to face Villanova. The 49ers were starting to look like a top 25 team, as we'd open this game extremely hot and jump out to a double-digit lead early. The boys had some ups and downs, but would play well for the rest of the first half, as we would eventually head into the break with a 4-point lead. Sadly, the second half will be all downhill for the Niners, as once Villanova took the lead, they never even looked back, and would eventually cruise to a relatively easy win, 75-68. A tough outing for our star player, Jeremy Gary, who would actually turn it around against the University of Washington, but sadly it still wasn't enough for the win. Sitting at 8-3, our next and last challenge before conference play is FAU, where we would finally get back on the winning side, 76-65, behind Bug's 22-point outing. Sitting at 9-3, our leading scorer up to this point is Richie Drapier, with 12 points a game, with Oliver Ngannou not far behind him. And I'm not quite sure what's going on with Jeremy Gary, as he quite literally has gotten worse in every stat. Nonetheless, we were so much better than every team in our conference, so we opened up 7-0 before facing CSU Bakersfield. To be honest, this game was never in any doubt for the 49ers, and this is beginning to feel like we could go undefeated in conference play, as we win 73-62, behind Antoine Buggs' 21 points. And so, with only 5 games remaining, we sit at 13-0 with a chance of going undefeated in conference play, which we would do and get ranked in the top 25 for the first time in the process. Our magical season has the Niners a projected 5 seed in the upcoming tournament. But if we start thinking ahead, we might end up losing in the conference tournament. Even though we couldn't finish the job in the conference tournament, we're still fortunate enough to come into the big dance as a 5 seed, facing off against 11-seeded Pepperdine. Team unity and game experience are through the roof, while also boasting the 16th ranked offense and 18th ranked defense. This young team was poised to make a deep run. Our first matchup against Pepperdine chose to be a dead even matchup on paper, and it was beginning to look just like that. As per usual with my rebuilds, this game opened up neck and neck, with no team creating any type of separation whatsoever for the entire first half, and will eventually head into the break down 31-30. The second half will be no different, with both teams constantly fighting and trading the lead all game long, until eventually, with just 10 seconds remaining, the 49ers are down 1. The boys would dish the ball all around like the Spurs to find the open man, and Dwayne Olamo hits a Kawhi Leonard type shot to give us the lead with under 5 seconds. Pepperdine would waste off some crucial time and be forced to put up a bad shot that doesn't go in, and will advance to the second round, winning 53-51. Our second round matchup puts us up against 3-seeded and 96 overall Michigan Wolverines. And after looking at their roster, I'm not quite sure how we're going to pull this one off. This game would open up all Wolverines, and it wouldn't change, as Michigan was just pouring it on us. The 49ers offense couldn't get going, and the defense couldn't stop a brick. This would cause us to head into the break, getting blown out by nearly 30 points already. And that will be all she wrote, as we're going to get bent over in the second half as well, and lose by almost 30 points. A disappointing end to such a tremendous season for the 49ers that saw us finish with a 29-5 record, but still couldn't make it past the second round. As the Kansas Jayhawks win the title, while Yurtman adds another conference title and Coach of the Year, but somehow we only end up with 2 second-team all-conference players, while Martell Good makes the freshman team. The team will be losing our top 2 scorers and some quality depth players. Hal Cleveland would go on to play for Pacific, while Donnie Capano is headed to Liberty. But with these 5 signings right here, I knew the team was still in good hands. Truthfully here, the roster just keeps getting better each and every year, and the new additions fit well into the team. But somehow, we still boast only an 87 overall. which don't get me wrong is still very good, especially when you're playing in the Big West Conference. This schedule should have us battle tested come tournament time. After opening the season with a blowout win against Oakland, the 49ers will travel to face Utah in what should be a pretty even matchup. The boys opened up this game and were playing extremely well, which would prove to be a very close and back and forth first half that would see us head into the break down 35-34. Sadly, the second half will be all Utah, as they would eventually jump to a double-digit lead and never look back. The Utahs would hand us our first loss of the season, 72-63, behind an ugly game from Jeremy Gary. Following a blowout win, we would sim to our next matchup against 17th ranked and 93 overall Kentucky Wildcats. And while it might not look like our players are there, they most definitely showed up to this game, as after simming to the end, we would cruise to a blowout win 57-30 against number 17 ranked Kentucky. After this huge win, we would head into the Drake, Iowa Realty Tournament, where we would be the clear-cut big dogs as we would go on to win the whole tournament in blowout fashion. The 49ers would then cruise past the Missouri Tigers before facing off against Stanford in what should be another very even matchup. Sitting at 6-1 heading into this game, you would think we would be in control most of the way, but come halftime, the Cardinal pulled a double-digit lead over us. With that being said, the 49ers were never able to recover, as the Cardinal will maintain their double-digit lead throughout the second half and cruise to an easy win, 82-72. With one game left before conference play, it doesn't get any easier for the Niners as we face off against St. Mary's. This game was looking a lot better than the last one, as the Niners get off on the right foot and ride it into the break, up 38-30. The second half was beginning to look like no different, as before you know it, we were able to push our lead up into the double digits with only 12 minutes remaining. But with just a minute remaining, things have started to get scary for the Niners, as we hold a narrow 2-point lead that we just couldn't hang on to. And to make matters worse, we lose one of our star players before conference play. With our leading scorer out all of conference play, the team will have to lean more on Alomo and Gary, but I think they're up for the task. And they most definitely did, as once again we would cruise to an 18-0 finish in the conference, just in time for Bugs to get back in the lineup and help us finish the job this year, which of course we did this time in blowout fashion against UC Irvine. Luke Summers would be our surprising leading scorer come season end, while Bugs and Gary both improved during conference play. Once again, the Niners' terrific season would slide them into the big dance as a 7 seed to face off against 10 seeded and 87 overall Virginia Tech. Even though they are lower overall than us, we are definitely on upset watch. We'll just have to hope that not only the 20th ranked offense, but the number 1 defense in the nation can help us pull this one out. This game would start off pretty close, with both teams trading baskets, just not at a high pace. 49ers would lead much of the way as we are in a low-scoring battle come halftime of 26-22. The second half will be much of the same, with both teams struggling to put points on the board. But this was perfect for the Niners, as we gradually increased our lead to double digits and never looked back, winning 53-44. Our duo of Gary and Bugs put together a solid night. Up next, the 49ers will face 2-seeded Louisville Cardinals, once again meeting a Goliath in the second round. The 49ers would start off this game playing well and trading baskets with the Cardinals, but it wouldn't take long for Louisville to take control. And before you know it, we're heading into the break down 31-22. Wow, and to think we played well in the first half and to come out and do this in the second is honestly sickening. The 2-seeded Louisville Cardinal going to absolutely blow us apart, 65-44, losing in the second round for the third straight season. In what was Jeremy Gary, Antoine Bugs, and Luke Summers' last game at Lbsu, it was a very disappointing showing. The Washington Huskies would go on to win the title this year, while Yurtman would take on his Conference Coach of the Year award for the 6th time, with Gary and Summers making the first team, while Bugs makes the second team. Wang Win is on the freshman team as well. Yurtman has some work to do this offseason, as we are losing our 3 best players. Once again, with no help from the transfer portal, Yurtman was able to pull off an insane class that includes 3 top 40 players, 2 5-stars, and 1 All-American. This class was good enough to be ranked 8th in the nation. And in the year I thought we would take a step back, this recruiting class is going to take us to the next level, as Dominique Hayward comes as an 81 overall, Chaz Crisp is a 76, and Smallwood is a 75. The new additions keep us at a steady 87 overall, once again having a majority of the best players in the conference. A blowout win over North Texas in Game 1 of the season will prepare us to face 18th ranked and 90 overall Arizona State. The first half will go way different than anyone could have expected, as the 49ers were competing with the Sun Devils the entire way through, until eventually heading into the break down only 2 points. The second half will continue to be a battle for much of the way through, but once the Sun Devils got hot, there was nothing we could do, and we just let this one slip away from us, 67 to 61. Dwayne Alomo's huge 23 points just wasn't enough to get us by tonight. A close call with Sister Jean and the Ramblers before heading into the Orange County shootout against the Missouri Tigers, who we take down pretty easily. And another blowout win in round 2, this time against Belmont before meeting the 17th ranked Washington Huskies in the championship round. And a quick reminder here that this team is coming off a national title. The 49ers opened this game on fire from behind the arc, hitting 3 after 3. And so, with the offense rolling, the Niners would easily cruise into the half with a 10-point lead over the 17th ranked Washington Huskies. The second half will be no different for either team, as the 49ers offense was absolutely rolling. We maintained our 10-point lead the entire half. So just like that, the 49ers hand the reigning champs their first loss of the season, 84 to 75. Freshman Chaz Crisp absolutely balled out, and he got a lot of help from Wynn and Alomo. A couple more wins against some pretty mediocre talent has the Niners sitting pretty at 9-1 before taking on a 4-2 Georgia team. A game that the boys, truthfully, just let slip away. Even though the Bulldogs were lower overall than us, they do sneak by us by 1 point. Following this loss, it won't get any easier for the Niners, as we welcome the number 1 ranked 100 overall Oregon Ducks to town. And yeah, there's no way we're going to win this game. And I stood correct. But, to be honest, it was a lot closer game than I or anyone really could have ever imagined. Nonetheless, the 49ers would fall to the Mighty Ducks 76 to 69. Sitting at 9-3 before conference play begins, Alomo is our leading scorer with 15 points per game, while the freshman duo of Crisp and Haywood are consistently contributing. The Niners would unfortunately suffer their first conference loss in over 2 years early, but would finish out the season without losing again. We're crowned conference champs once again, and of course, we have the best players in the entire conference. Our terrific season once again slides us into the big dance as a 7th seed, but we get an unlucky draw as we face 10-seeded Tennessee in the very first round. For the second straight year, the boys were on upset watch, as the Volunteers are a higher overall than us, and if we were to win, we'd more than likely have to face 2-seeded Iowa up next. This game would start with the Niners jumping out to a sizable lead, behind some pretty efficient 3-point shooting, but we would watch it fold away as the half comes closer, and we'll eventually head into the break down by 3 points, 33 to 30. The second half will continue to be a battle, much of the way through. Eventually, it would be the 49ers to put together our run and create some distance, enough to help us escape the upset and pull off the win 74 to 63. Wynn and Alomo balled out today, accounting for around half of our team's total points. The 49ers second round matchup won't get any easier as we take on the 2-seeded Iowa Hawkeyes. Once again, the boys would open the game with the hot hand behind the arc, as we easily jump out to a double-digit lead early, and eventually cruise into the half with the lead 37 to 27. It looks like Wayne Wynn is going to carry us to our first Sweet 16 ever, as he has 15 points at the half. And if you thought the Niners played well in the first half, boy, second half would have blown you away, as the 49ers would cruise to an upset win against 2-seeded Iowa by the blowout score of 76 to 52. Alomo cooled off this game, but Wang Wynn stepped up big time with 24 points. Our Sweet 16 appearance finally gives us an easier matchup as we face 3-seeded but only 93 overall Pittsburgh Panthers. This game would start off extremely slow, both teams struggling to score. The 49ers would have a small lead, but once the Panthers got rolling, they never looked back, as they would eventually cruise into the break with a double-digit lead up 33 to 20. The second half will be much of the same, as with the Panthers rolling, there was nothing the 49ers could do. And with that being said, the Panthers will end our season in the Sweet 16, 66 to 42. The Purdue Boilermakers would go on to win the title as a 2 seed, and once again, Coach Yurtman and the 49ers turn in another conference championship and Coach of the Year award. Dominique Haywood would be crowned Conference Freshman of the Year, while the 49ers absolutely filled up the first team all-conference with 3 total players. Chaz Crisp would also make the freshman team alongside of Haywood. Yurtman's contract would be extended for 6 years, while the winningest team in school history would only go on to lose 2 pretty significant players. But once again, Coach Yurtman went to work this offseason by adding 4 more players to the roster, all high schoolers, including a 5-star world player. Despite the 49ers losing our top player in Alomo, the team still looks ready to compete as we come in as an 87 overall once again. while we return 4 starters and have plenty of depth thanks to the new additions, all while once again having the best players in the conference. Yurtman would pick up his 200th career win in the first game of the season against Detroit. We would then have another easy win before meeting the 8th-ranked Arizona State Sun Devils in the Polar Bear Tip-Off Classic. This game would start all Niners, as we jumped to a pretty decent lead early, but it wouldn't take long for the Sun Devils to storm right back into it and make it a game, eventually heading into the break down 25-24 in this low-scoring affair. This second half would look much like the end of the first did, with the lead flip-flopping back and forth constantly the entire way through. But with just a minute remaining, Wang Win would hit a jumper that would end up being the dagger, as the 49ers down the 8th-ranked Sun Devils 59-56. The freshman, Ruben Roel, received his first Player of the Game award as he stepped up on both sides of the ball. The 49ers would close out the Polar Bear tip-off with 2 more wins and be crowned champions. And so, after starting the season with a tremendous 9-0 record, the boys will travel to face 23rd ranked Villanova. This game will start off low scoring for both teams, with the Niners leading much of the way, but once the ball got rolling for Villanova, they never looked back, as they head into the break with a double-digit lead over us. This second half will be worse than the first, as Villanova will continue to slap us around. Even though we made it seem closer than it actually was, the 49ers would suffer the first loss of the season, 79-70. In our next game, we'd have a very close call with the California Golden Bears, but managed to come out on top. Followed by a win against Old Dominion, the Niners sit at 11-1, the 3rd-ranked team in the mid-major poll, before conference play begins. The very next week, the 49ers would jump into the polls as the 24th-ranked team. And with that being said, the boys would cruise to another conference championship, finishing the regular season at 28-2. Our leading scorers for this season are Dominique Haywood and Chaz Chris, as Wang went down with an injury early in this season. A close call in our first game in the conference tournament will propel us to another close call in the next round before facing UC Santa Barbara in the championship round. Thankfully, the boys would wake up and cruise to an absolute blowout win, avenging our only conference loss this season, which brings the 49ers into the big dance as a 3 seed after their 30-win season. As expected, the Niners would take care of business and roll right through the 14 seed, before heading into the second round where we meet 11-seeder Robert Morris, who's coming off an upset win of their own. Fortunately for us, there was no Cinderella run here, as the boys would blow out Robert Morris to advance to the Sweet 16 to face 2-seeded Creighton. Let's hope a top 25 offense and defense in the nation can help us get past the Sweet 16. I really do wish I could say that this was the case, but after watching this first half, it was not looking pretty for Yurtman and the 49ers, as we eventually head into the break down 48-39. Wang is trying his best to keep us in this one with 15 first-half points. The second half will be the exact same. Even though the boys made it look a hell of a lot closer than it really was, Creighton ends our season in the Sweet 16 once again. The Michigan Wolverines are crowned champs once again, and of course, Coach Yurtman and the 49ers are their conference champs and Coach of the Year. Ruben Roel would win Conference Freshman of the Year, while somehow we had no first-team players. Although we were fortunate enough to have 2 players on the second team, and 2 players on the freshman team. The Niners do end up losing 2 quality players this offseason, but Coach Yurtman would replace them with 2 studs. Year 10, the expectations are a lot higher, as the roster is complete, so a Sweet 16 exit won't cut it. A blowout win against NJIT in our first game leads us to a matchup with the 11th-ranked UCLA Bruins. Per usual, this game would start off as a battle, with no team gaining any distance from one another, but eventually it would be the Niners to gain some traction, as we eventually head into the break with the lead 35-25. This second half will be all Niners, as we held firm on our lead and cruised to a relatively easy win over the 11th ranked Bruins. Smallwood's huge 26 points was more than enough to help us get by. Following this win, the 49ers will be ranked 25 and pull off a win against Syracuse before facing number 9 ranked Mississippi State. And somehow, this game was never in question for us, as we cruised to another easy win against a top 10 opponent. Wang Win absolutely balled out once again to lead us to victory. Sitting at 10-0 and ranked 14 in the nation, our next battle is against 19th ranked San Francisco. With the Niners absolutely rolling this year, this game was once again never in any doubt for us, as we cruised to a blowout win, 85-68. Smallwood's huge 23 points was more than enough to help us get by once again. Sitting at 12-0 and ranked 9 in the country, the boys have one more test against 14th ranked USC Trojans before heading into conference play. And believe it or not, for the 13th straight time, the boys just kept it rolling, as we once again cruised to another blowout win against a top 25 opponent. A truly great all-around performance from the whole team. With conference play set to begin, Dominic Haywood is by far our leading scorer with 16 a game. But Smallwood, Wynn, and Crisp are all contributing double-digit points as well. Unfortunately for us, our undefeated season would be cut short, as we unexpectedly fall to CSU Bakerfield in a tragic 1-point loss. But thankfully, the boys wouldn't let this one loss get to their head, as we cruised through the regular season without losing again, finishing 30-1, ranked 8th in the nation. As expected, the 49ers would cruise through the Big West Conference Tournament behind some pretty big performances from Smallwood and head into the big dance as a 1 seed in the West region. The Niners would roll past East Carolina in the first round behind Chad's crisp 30-point outing before meeting 9-seeded and 96 overall Villanova Wildcats in the second round. And to be honest, this Villanova team is insanely good. If we can somehow manage to get past them, I think we have a legitimate shot at the title. The entire first half was a complete battle, as both teams were consistently trading buckets and never letting up any separation between each other. But with around 2 minutes left, the 49ers kicked it into gear and propelled to a double-digit lead as we eventually head into the break, up by 11 points. The 49ers would continue rolling in the second half en route to a blowout win, 84-58. That included a huge showing from our Big Three. For this year's Sweet 16, we face off against 5-seeded St. Louis, who are coming off a 1-point win against Ole Miss. The 49ers' historic season was starting to look like it was coming to an end, as the first half was all St. Louis Billikens, and will eventually head into the break down by 8 points, only behind this buzzer beater 3 by Ledbetter. The second half wasn't any better, as every time we pulled close, St. Louis would pull back away. It was looking more and more like our season was coming to an end in the Sweet 16 once again. But when all hope was lost, Wynn would pull on the offensive rebound and get the tough and one to pull us within 1 point with 13 seconds left. The Billikens would of course go down and sink both free throws to bring us to a 3-point game with only 7 seconds remaining. And with no timeouts left, the Niners would inbound the ball immediately to Smallwood, who was having some trouble getting it past half court, but he eventually finds Haywood open, and bang! Dominique Hayward hits the buzzer beater 3 to send us to overtime. Both teams would trade buckets back and forth until this dagger 3 by Wynn that would ice the game as we go on to complete the comeback and win in overtime 88-83. Wynn absolutely balled out with 26 points, and Hawkins had a near double-double with 14 points off the bench. The 49ers' first trip to the Elite 8, and it won't get any easier for us as we take on 2-seeded and 99 overall Georgia Tech. Thankfully, the Niners' offense picked up where they left off in the last game. And before you know it, we were already up double digits, eventually heading into the break, up by 13 points. The second half will be absolutely no different, if not worse, for the Yellow Jackets, as the Fat Lady was singing, and the Niners would cruise to a huge blowout win in the Elite 8 by the score of 101-61. Once again, Wynn put together a terrific game, but we can't forget about Hawkins, who, off the bench, had a 21-point double-double. And to be honest, the Yellow Jackets didn't play a terrible game. But when the Niners hit 75% from 3 as a team, they're going to be tough to beat. The 49ers' first Final Four matchup in school history has us facing the 3-seeded Mississippi State Bulldogs, a team who we actually beat early in the season by 11 points. This game would be far worse than the first time we met. That was for the Bulldogs, of course, as the Niners cruised to another blowout win, 67-51. Smallwood would pick up where Wynn left off, and Hawkins was continuing to improve while coming off the bench. The national title is set, as 1-seeded Long Beach State will take on 1-seeded Creighton, with both teams looking to win their first title in school history, while the 49ers are looking to get revenge for last year's Sweet 16 loss. Regardless of what happens here, this team has come an extremely long way, especially with only one senior in the starting lineup. The Niners were clearly on a mission this year, as with the offense continuing to roll, we have no issue pushing our lead to nearly double digits before cruising into the break up 33-24. The second half will be all 49ers, as we continue to extend our lead, never allowing Creighton to get back into this one. Eventually, cruising to our first national title ever by the score of 69-50. While no one popped out with the 20 ball this game, the team still played a great all-around game. As we know, the Niners were crowned champions, but somehow Coach Ertman is snubbed for National Coach of the Year to the Creighton coach. Smallwood would end up being our only first team, while Crisp and Wynn would make the second team all-conference. French would also make the freshman team. Which means, at the ripe age of 35, and a 271-66 career record, Coach Ertman has won a title and have completed the rebuild in 10 seasons. After winning the title, the Niners would only go on to lose 2 players this offseason while adding 1 freshman. The 49ers opened the season as the 7th-ranked team in the nation, led by All-American Dominique Haywood, and it's not hard to tell why we're a preseason pick for the title with this roster. Nonetheless, the team would finish 30-1. Despite a buttload of injuries, the team was able to nearly pull off the undefeated season once again, only losing to Cal. Dominique Haywood would end up being our leading scorer with 20 points a game, while Smallwood provided 15 as well. These two would help us build the number 2 offense and the number 1 defense in the nation come season end. After cruising through the Big West tournament, the 49ers slide into the Big Dance as a 5 seed. The Niners would skim past San Diego State in the first round by just 3 points before meeting Creighton in the second round for a rematch of the title game last season. Sadly, the team is still nowhere near full strength, and I just don't think we'll have enough to get by in this one, which will be the case, as Creighton will go on to win by 12 points and get revenge from last season's title game.